Welcome back to the Stay Broke podcast. Today we're sitting down with Maria Kordit, founder of MK Creative Arts Studio here in Wake Forest. Maria's journey started as a competitive international ballroom and Latin 10 dancer before transitioning into public health and technology. Now she's building a creative movement space rooted in discipline, community, and purpose. This conversation is about performance, risk, and what it really takes to turn passion into a sustainable business. Maria, welcome to the Stay Broke podcast.
Thanks, Randy. Glad to be here.
This is cool because this is the first time that we've had a couple on in two different parts, so that's
and
exciting.
Very different too.
I know. We like to start off with just telling us kind of who you are, where you're from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So I was born in what is now known to be the former USSR. I moved to Seattle, Washington with my mom when I was 8 years old. Grew up in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Kind of hit all the quadrants of the United States, lived in California, New York, now here in North Carolina. And I was always very academic, so I knew I was going to end up in some mainstream academic career. But I began dancing as a child, and it stuck with me. Some people run for therapy and stress relief. Some people go to yoga. I can't sit still. If I switch my legs every 2 minutes, you'll be able to pick up on it. I dance. I love to create. I love to use that part of my mind and body.
Awesome. How was it? How old were you when you moved from USSR?
I just turned 8 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was at that perfect cusp of being able to assimilate into Western culture, but also old enough to retain some of the Eastern values on admiring the arts, music, things of that sort.
That's cool. How was your experience in USSR?
To be honest, I don't remember much. So I'm from the Black Sea region,
okay,
which is currently under a lot of contest, and I grew up by the water. I was always outdoors. I remember just being very adventurous. I feel like in the way we are here as well, but I remember just always being outside. And other than that, I remember school being very difficult. School in Eastern Europe is significantly more demanding. By the end of first grade, you have to have the multiplication table memorized and probably tens of pages of poetry. And you have to be able to recite it without looking at the actual poems.
Yeah.
So definitely very demanding. I definitely felt the shift. I remember starting school in the United States. But other than that, I had a blessed childhood. I really did. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. How was it moving to the United States?
Definitely brought difficulties. So when my mother and I immigrated here, we came as political asylum status. I don't even know if that exists anymore. Political asylum was a status given when you were pre-authorized to enter the country based on already a predefined need. So we were under Jewish persecution, my family was, so we were granted the pathway to come already, we would say 10 steps ahead of maybe another type of a refugee status. And in the coming here, we lost the only supportive mechanism, which was my grandfather at that time, to build a sustainable life here. So you pretty much have a young mom and a young child, and it wasn't easy. My mother worked 2 or 3 jobs. I began working at age 13, not to save up for dolls or clothes, but to actually pay for food. And it was my childhood in America was definitely rigorous and demanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that harder to adapt here than it was living in USSR?
Well, there I was, let's say, a spoiled child. I had a grandfather that would give me anything, a mother that was successful in her career. I was blessed in the quality of life that we had, and then it's very quickly taken away. And to be able to adapt, now you're in Western culture, so you see people getting cars and taking SAT prep classes and wearing the baby fat jeans and the Echo Red jackets and the knockoff Tiffany necklaces, right? The late 90s, early 2000 era of fashion. And you can't have that but you're trying to establish your identity in this culture. And then on top of that, instead of hanging out after school, you're going to work, not being able to participate in some athletic teams, even though I tried that as much as I could, and I was successful in that. It's a shift, and then you struggle psychologically because you know where you come from, but you can't validate it as a young adult or a young brain. And that definitely, I would say, for a while messes with you. But then you leave high school and then you realize we all have our journey and we all end up in different places anyways, regardless.
Absolutely. Yeah. Surprisingly, I have a similar childhood. I started working when I was 13, and it was so that I could support myself. And you just do what you got to do to survive.
But it teaches you a lot.
Oh, yeah.
One, you learn a lot about businesses from a young age. And second of all, it does develop a grit. My principle is, as much as I feel like a childhood should be lived, something about that accountability and the fact that you do have to provide, you have to create something in order to survive and receive something back. It's just the process of life. And you got to go through the experience of it.
Yeah. Did you start dancing before you came to the United States?
No, I was athletic by beating up kids in the neighborhood. That's about it. No, when we came here, my mother noticed that I walk a little bit sickle, like my feet are turned in. So she put me in ballet because that's the first process of straighten your legs. Because telling your child walk straight, the neurodynamic response is just not going to align the legs. So she put me in ballet, and I found it very boring. I think I was gifted because I got accepted to some special program without having ballet experience. I don't remember the details, but I could not handle the repetitiveness of it. And I wanted to move forward faster, very impatient by nature. And then what happened was at that time, I was 9-10 years old. My mother worked at what used to be called the Bon Marché, which is the former Macy's, before Macy's took it over.
Okay.
And she had some friends whose children were world dance champions, opening up a ballroom dance studio in a suburb of Seattle. And she said, hey, can you bring your daughter? We need to do a photo shoot, advertisement, press release, like new business, make it look like there's kids, just a typical process of a grand opening. And I never left the studio after that. I fell in love with the music, the Latin music. I fell in love with the fact that you get to wear heels. That was a interesting time. I fell in love with the complexity of the movement and how it made me feel. And that's how I fell in love with ballroom. And I never really went into the mainstream, like company dance studios, like tap, hip hop, jazz, ballet. I've experienced it, but I was classically trained under the world of dance port, is what it's called. Yeah.
It seems like one of those things where you have something to keep striving for. Like you can never be perfect at it.
Yeah.
Did you like that challenge?
I did. And I wasn't, full fairness, I'm not the most gifted dancer. So dancers generally in the world of dance, there's like a classification of how well you dance, how well you teach, and how well you choreograph. I've met incredible teachers that are not technically great dancers. I've met the most physically, dynamically skilled dancers, and they cannot teach well. They cannot produce the words and explain conceptually what they're so gifted at in doing. And I've met choreographers that create the most beautiful production pieces that don't move well, or they can piece things together, but they can't pronounce out what it is that they're doing. They have to kind of depend on someone understanding through broken words their vision, and it turns out to be absolutely phenomenal. So I am my classification, very good teacher, moderate dancer, not so great choreographer.
Okay.
Takes me time to choreograph,
Fair
that's
enough.
for sure. But yeah.
So did you continue to dance through high school, or was there a point where you had to stop?
It was, I always had stop and goes. So one, ballroom dancing is extremely financially a difficult sport. It doesn't compare to company studios. When I say financially difficult, a private lesson can go between $100 to $300 for 45 minutes. A ballroom dress is $3,000 to $5,000. Oh, wow. So easily in a month, you can spend $5,000 to $10,000. That's not money my mom had. So the beauty of ballroom dancing is you have to dance with a partner. And I was very blessed that for the partners that I had, their parents were able to support the partnership. So the full burden wasn't 100% on my mother. So contribute what we can, but it never stopped us from taking a private lesson or going to a dance competition. But because of that cycle, I ended up losing partners or having to switch partners throughout the evolution because a partner would progress significantly faster. They would get another girl and they would go to a different tier of competition. Now, throughout this period, you got to understand, I have a Ukrainian Jewish mother. So academics is the only way. You can dance, you can sing, you can do whatever you want, but you need to build that kind of academic career. So I always knew I was going to go into university. And I always knew that dancing will live by that side and I will find a way. Now, that journey was difficult to find a way to balance the passion, the evocation of sorts, versus the pathway to an actual career. So I did stop dancing when I was 18, purely based on the fact that at that moment, I didn't have another partner that I could compete with. Partners moved to different universities. Some never went to college. They aggressively doubled down on being in a dance studio. And then I entered university. And at that moment, I kind of shifted how I look at dance. So I became a social dancer, which is a whole different industry. It's like the salsa clubs or West Coast, East Coast swing clubs, where I actually stopped doing dance sport as it is defined on maybe Dancing with the Stars and started to experience dancing from a purely social mechanism. And for a very short period of time while I was in the university, I got a job at Arthur Murray Dance Studios. There's two famous franchises in America, Arthur Murray and Fred Astaire. Seattle is very popular for Arthur Murray, North Carolina very popular for Fred Astaire. Actually, the largest Fred Astaire studios are in North Carolina and out of the whole country. In case you didn't know that.
I didn't.
And I tried working in a franchise studio. That was a very interesting experience because it is a franchise business. So dancing is monetized of sorts. That didn't resonate with me, but it was a fantastic experience. And I got to dance with so many fellow teachers and so many students. And I look back at those memories with a lot of joy. And I kind of continue to maintain this social dancing aspect throughout my academic life. And yeah, that's at least the beginnings.
What did you go to university for?
So I started off as pre-med, finished pre-med, organic chemistry, man. Never can't pay me enough to do more organic chemistry. And that was a very convoluted experience because this whole time you're taking classes to get into medical school, not knowing if it will actually happen. I went to University of Washington, so it is 500, 600, 700 students per class. Because it is such a large university, everything is sort of, I forgot what it's called, when they curve down, the averages were lowered to, for anyone that is familiar with academics, to a 2.6 GPA. So if you're really good, it looks very mediocre on your report cards. Maybe 1 to 2 students somehow got above a 3.0. So it weeded out hundreds of students consistently over and over. And what happened, so academically I was struggling to stand out. At the same time, I got the opportunity, I did clinical research at the university, that was great, genetic science, and I had an opportunity to actually listen into medical school lessons. Now, my biological father and my grandmother were physicians, so I had a very detailed understanding of what medical school and becoming a doctor is like. And I did not really understand that in Western culture, how medicine is taught in medical school is unlike anywhere else in the world. An aloof understanding of what I was expecting. So I thought, when you go into medical school, you go into the morgue right away, right? That's how can you memorize a picture without seeing it in real life, seeing it in various shapes, forms? And when I started shadowing medical school students based on this program, I realized that academics on learning physiology and disease management is completely different here. You learn off textbooks and then you go into practice. And I can't learn like that. As an individual person, I know so many people that could. I can't. I'm highly visual. I have to touch. I have to feel. So I attended an OBGYN class where like a plastic pelvis was passed around and they're memorizing off paper combinations of, if the mom is diabetic, then you do this. If the mom is this, then you do that. And I was asking the students, well, when do you actually get to see a birth? Like, how do you know if you even want to like do this? And they said 2 years from now. So at that point, I started to shut down mentally, as I don't think I'm capable of this. And throughout my undergraduate studies, I was working at an ophthalmology optometry practice, and I was doing kind of everything there, measuring glasses, measuring contact lenses, helping the administrators. And I did confirm the fact that I love medicine, and I was able to demonstrate bedside manners and clinical competence of sorts. So the clinic actually supported my education to get licensing through a very specific commission that oversees these ophthalmology and optometry technicians. So you think they're nurses, but they're actually kind of through a different line of education. And I finished university not knowing what I was going to do. I finished university with a lot of hard sciences, bachelor's in actually Russian literature and history, because I needed to curve up my GPA. So I thought if I study something that I know, it would work. Did not help. It was very difficult actually, because I had to relearn all the broken Russian that I had. And here I am just working full time at an optometry clinic with a degree, not really knowing what to do next.
So what did you do next?
Seattle became a little complicated for me, so I decided to relocate to Southern California. I had an extended family friend. They invited me down, and I thought maybe a change of environment will work, and maybe I'll try medical school again, kind of rethink it through. So I ended up in San Clemente, San Juan Capistrano area of Orange County. What a different life. The Pacific Northwest and California are two different universes, that's for sure. And I ended up becoming the lead technician for one of the most famous ophthalmology surgical practices in Orange County. It was 5 locations. It was everything from plastic surgery to reconstructive, like gunshot wound, reconstructing the face, kind of ophthalmology area, to disease management. And at that moment, I was kind of put in the position of the lead ophthalmic technician for the owner of all of these practices. Incredible doctor. I learned so much from him. One of the most kindest men I ever met. Dr. Tayani, if you're listening, you're always on my heart and mind. And I decided to go back to school to retake some of the hard science classes. I don't know what I was thinking. Thinking I can curve up my grade and try again. And at that time, that particular practice continued to further invest into my studies, and I continued to get a higher and higher license of qualification in this particular industry. And I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I'm not going to go to medical school. Maybe I will just continue to educate myself and work directly in ophthalmology practices and maybe become a teacher, teach young students, maybe move into management, oversee large practices, surgical ambulatory centers. So I'll use the back door to enter into medicine. And I loved ophthalmology. Can I go on a side note for just a moment? Not enough people, in my opinion, appreciate eyesight. We don't feel it. We don't perceive it. We think about heart, we think about diabetes, we think about weight, we think about our nerves. We don't really think about our eyes, but the implications of poor sight or losing sight is astronomical. A kid that can't see well but can't access glasses or doesn't understand. How many cases I've had, children are put on medication thinking they're ADHD or ADD, when in reality, they just can't see well. And access to providers, access to resources, that stops that child from maybe learning to read well. Or undiagnosed conditions of the eye that leave a working man that works with his hands without the ability to work. A craftsman, a woodworking, metalworking, Okay, but they're the sole contributor of the family. Or when parents lose their vision and you become their caretaker. And the implications on economic success of a family or society, the community sort of success of what they're able to produce is extremely inhibited. And there are so many rural parts of our country that are like third world, where loss of sight completely can inhibit the success of a family. And I get very passionate about this. That's like my long-term dream, is to tackle preventative blindness, and even at a global level. And there's a lot of organizations across the world that do this, that are very successful. And basically out of 8 billion people in 8 billion people in the world, 2 billion have preventative blindness. Something could have been done with appropriate resources. But we focus so much on, heart and maybe even hearing, and we don't really fixate that much on dental and eyes. And that's a massive gap from a public health standpoint. Anyways, that aside, when I moved to California, I met my now husband then after only living there for 3 months. So whatever long-term goals I was trying to build in California kind of, I would say, never moved forward, because after 9 months of long distance dating, and he was from Brooklyn, New York, he said, "Would you like to move to New York?" Who doesn't say no to New York, right? What's the worst case? I come back to Seattle or California. So without getting too far in my career development, I moved to Brooklyn. And before even settling down in Brooklyn, I got a job. And this is where my life kind of changed. In Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, at a practice that really served underserved populations. And that's a very different world, because at first I was in a university campus, and then I was at a very wealthy community in California. In Brooklyn, I started to notice a pattern where patients were potentially losing vision, but the physicians were phenomenal. Like, I know they were great physicians, and I know they cared about their patients, and they did everything possible. And by the way, I'm dancing this whole time, so I want to give you context. I got to get back to California, because I did work 25 hours a week at a dance studio while working for this physician. I should probably go. It's okay. We'll come back to the dancing part. I'll finish the healthcare journey to some extent. In Brooklyn, I had a lot more patients losing their vision. And I was confused. I was perplexed, because when you live in a clinical world, you don't really understand anything else about healthcare. It's very reciprocal. Physician says this, you do this, you don't do it, you get worse. You get better, etc. And I had a catastrophic case that kind of broke my psychology on what I want to do in healthcare. It was a middle-aged African American male that had diabetes, but the literacy was low. He wasn't taking his diabetes medications. He was a little bit more in a poverty area. It's a food desert, so there's no grocery stores. It's more Subway, McDonald's type of food. And he, I don't think, understood that diabetes is the leading cause of blindness. So when his vision started to get poor, you don't really go to the doctor. So his neighbors gave him reading glasses, thinking it will help. He appears in the clinic, and he's having retinopathy, which is bleeding in the eye. That comes from progressive diabetes, and it happens a lot more often than you would like to know. And we do surgery, and we say, you have to come back, because the bleeding will resume. We have to do a second surgery. He doesn't come back. And I remember this instance very well, because we called him for a reminder to the appointment. Then we sent him a card for the reminder of the appointment, and then we give up. We have so many patients. We can't keep calling back this one patient. What I later define as, he fell through the cracks. He came back 6 months later, permanently blind in the eye. There's nothing we could do. And I remember him crying in the room, confused. I'm confused. I have kids. I need to see them. What is going on? And it was the first time ever I actually, physically broke down in the room. Because you learn to build that wall. You have sympathy, but you also have to self-protect in some way. And I started researching like crazy. And I started to understand this concept of what happens in that room that I thought could impact a patient so much is like a 1%. Everything else that happens is when the patient leaves the room. Do they have the money to pick up their medication? Do they have access to food? Are they coming into a house where there's no heating, there's no windows, there's no air conditioner, there's no working fridge for their refrigerated eye drops? There's so many mechanisms, and how this 99% of your life actually determines your health. I got very angry, passionate, wrote a letter about how much I hate all of this and how I wasted so much of my life on thinking I can change healthcare in the patient room, to Columbia University to try to get into their Masters of Health Policy program, because I thought I'm going to go into policy and I'm going to rewrite how we look at healthcare. And I got accepted. And I, throughout that time, continued to do ophthalmology work, but at a mega hospital system, a very, very large healthcare system in New York, while basically buying a golden ticket. That degree was just a pass to transition out of clinical work into administrative work, policy work, operational work. You can't make that switch without having some tangible mechanism. So you either got to know someone or you got to be educated in this other realm of public health. So that's the switch that I had to go through. Yeah.
Interesting. How old were you at this point?
24, 25.
Jeez. That's a whole life right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was quick. But I'm very grateful to a lot of the physicians that I worked with and a lot of the professors that I worked with, because it's a huge reframing on how you perceive a concept. Because when you grow up in a family of doctors, you see medicine very one way. And then your life just kind of switches it up on you, and you kind of redefine a certain business element or a certain understanding or a certain, just a perception of how something works. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Because healthcare in the United States is a business first and foremost.
Unfortunately, it is. I try to say I'm on the right side of history. I'm like the 0.01% trying to make that shift. Will it change in our lifetime? I don't think so. Can we create a ripple effect in our lifetime? I think so. Yeah.
Interesting. So let's go back to California for a minute. Let's dive back into the story. First, about, you continuing to dance, but also about you meeting Ilya. We got to hear his side of it. It'd be
cool
to hear your side of it.
Yeah. So at that time, I would call her my dance mom of sorts. She's basically a leader in the dance community in Seattle that trained me and my partners or at least I trained at her studio. I got very close to her. She ran a dance competition in San Francisco called the Autumn Dance Classic once a year. And when I moved to Southern California, she said, Maria, can you come up for the event? I need just some extra hands. Administration, front desk, checking in, floor deck. And I love her. I respect her. So I said yes. So I was driving up to San Francisco and I reached out to a friend that I know was also going to the event that lives in Vegas. Would love to catch up with him. And he said, yeah, when you get here, I'm actually having lunch with a whole bunch of friends. Join us, because then we're going to start dancing, competing. We're going to be very busy. We don't know if we'll catch you later. So when I get to San Francisco, literally out of my car, after 6 hours of driving in my sweaty clothes, I meet him and he has a whole bunch of friends, and Ilya is part of that group. And when I shake Ilya's hand, like, hey, nice to meet you, I'm meeting everyone, the very first thing he says is, how do you know it's nice to meet me? What if I'm an asshole? And that was an interesting perspective, very outside of the box. And he ended up sitting across from me in lunch, although I didn't pay much attention to him. We ended up speaking a lot. And then I definitely felt a connection. Undeniably, I felt a connection. I would say he kind of stalked me around the hotel because I was busy working, but he would just casually pop up with a plate of fruits, or I was coming down on a Saturday morning, I remember this so well, and he was by the elevator waiting with some crepes and candy and fruits. Like, how did he know when I was going to come down? Like, what if I come down at 12 or 6 a.m.? I guess intuition. He read poems to me randomly. Continued to feed me. It's weird when I look at it now. It was like food. He just continued to bring me food. I saw him watching me when I was with some kids. I don't remember what I was doing, but I remember looking over and he was at the bleachers kind of leaning, watching me. We spent a lot of time together. And I didn't want him to go. I wanted to spend time with him. So when he had to leave, I said, please don't go, come back. And he decided to just last minute purchase a vending spot at another competition in Hollywood 2 weeks later that he's never been to. That's not his territory or sort of market segment. And he came back in 2 weeks and something happened and he kind of couldn't be at his booth for a couple hours. And I kind of felt bad. And I was sitting at the booth monitoring it. And I sold like 20 pairs of shoes. He came back and he had no idea how I did it. I think because I just knew how to dance. So I already this is how it's supposed to fit and this is how it works. So you want the shoes or not? So I held down the booth and I think that's when he fell in love with me. I think because he was like, wow, she can sell. I'm like, I don't know if I can sell. I'm in my element over here. And we continued to see each other every 2, 4, 6 weeks until end of June when I moved.
Awesome. That's fun. Oh. Yeah. It's funny hearing the same story from both angles because he told it almost the same way.
Almost the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I know it's cheesy, but I really do think we're soulmates.
Yeah.
I say that a lot. I've never really believed in it until it happened. I wasn't even looking for anyone. I mean, I just relocated. I mean, I was 1 week in San Diego, 1 week in Hollywood, just up and out and with friends, hanging out, partying. Wasn't really looking for a husband per se. He just kind of came into my life, but all for the better.
Next thing you know, you're moving across the country.
Yeah. And then I felt like I was living the Robert De Niro Bronx Tale. Felt like that was my expectation. I'm going to be in this fantasy land. He had that apartment where you got the fire escape, but it's like a mini balcony.
Yeah.
Just kind of hanging out there, feeling so badass. Yeah, after 6 months, I'm like, this is not how people live.
No, that's not what the Bronx is.
Where's my garbage disposal and like a laundry machine inside the house? I wouldn't even have to go to a laundromat all the time. But it was a beautiful experience. It was absolutely beautiful. I would do it over and over and over again, no matter what. Yeah.
Awesome. So, did we skip over anything in California or are we moving on?
No, just I danced a lot in California. I got embedded in a dance studio, Lawn Dance. It was a legacy dance studio and I became one of their head instructors. So I danced a lot. I had so many students, had to put together choreography. I remember spending nights and nights trying to put together choreography, and I ended up competing a lot with my students. I would say that was a peak of being immersed in a dance studio culture as an adult in my life, because I wasn't necessarily dancing myself for myself. I was purely dancing only with students. But it was fun for me because I didn't have to fixate on my technical elements. It was more about teaching students their technical elements for the show dancers or studio competitions. And I had so many wonderful students that they became like family. That whole studio became like family because you get dressed up, you have these events. When there's a competition, you go as a studio. And I danced a lot in California. Absolutely a lot. Just working 7 to 4, studio 6 to 9, 6 to 10 every day.
What was harder to leave behind, the job or the studio?
I'd say the studio. Yeah. It felt like home. It really, really did. I still stay in contact with some of those students, the studio owner. I think because it was a private studio, I never felt like I had to be part of the sales process of dancing. They were literally just students there that wanted to learn how to dance, whether it was for psychological safety, mental health stabilization, finding meaning and purpose after becoming widows or becoming retired. Such a wide facet of purposes. And it really felt, I know it sounds cheesy, but it felt rewarding. It really did.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. We appreciate everybody for watching. We appreciate the growth that we're seeing. We're getting amazing guests. We still need to get a little bit more reach to keep this momentum going. So help us out. Drop a comment, like, follow, subscribe, share if you love the content. Help us continuing to get amazing guests with amazing stories and help those stories get around the world like they should be. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So back to the Bronx, you're in university again, right? And trying to change your field. And did you continue to dance?
Yes. So at that time, there was a studio in Brooklyn that was for competitive kids. I got connected to that studio, and I very actively sort of led one of the teachers that supported the competitive training program. There were also some students that needed a teacher to dance with because they didn't have their own partner, but they wanted to continue to compete. So I danced with some students. And also the ballroom dance scene in New York is very advanced, some of the best in the world. So at that moment, I kind of got back into dancing myself heavily. I was always dancing myself. When there was a coach coming through town anywhere, I took an opportunity to take lessons with them and train. But at this moment in my in my dancing development, I decided I want to compete again, or let me rephrase this. I decided I wanted to perform again at a high caliber. So because so many world champions and professional dancers exist in the New York area, it was very easy to embed yourself in a studio. And it's a little bit tricky because I cannot compete as a professional myself because it is not my career and I'm not permanently embedded with my partner. My partner is a teacher that has a professional partner they compete with all the time for world titles. But I am a competitive dancer, so it's kind of like a student-teacher category, even though I'm not an amateur. And I started heavily training again at an advanced level, trying to refining my technique, and it felt so good. It felt so good. It was hard to balance the full-time job and the academics and the dancing. Miraculously, I don't know how, but I pulled it off. One project successfully pulled through. I did a Sound of Silence performance, blindfolded. It was always a vision that I had to do this beautiful ballroom routine, and then the blindfold comes off. And I performed that at 2 stages, two major events in the New York area. And that's kind of... it's how I function. I get an inch and a vision of something that I want to create, whether it is for myself or for the community. And in New York is where I started to get these heightened desires. And I can't sleep at night. I would re-listen to the song over and over again, and I would create the choreography in my head or the event or whatever it is that I'm trying to put together. And I don't know if it is because I felt like I'm finally in an environment where I can be heard for my ideas, or because I had enough professional peers by my side to say, this is great, let's do it. I got a lot of yeses. So that's where I kind of entered into what I would say my current state of being a dancer is, which is I want to create. I want to create. I can dance myself. I dance myself all the time. I teach Friday night on Whites. I teach here. I teach there. I teach all over the community. Yes, I enjoy that because I feel like Wake Forest needs more movement. We need more creative movement, right? I know we have a lot of Pilates and yoga here, but something that kind of goes a little bit more deeper into that connection with people and the soul and music. But New York created a place where my mind started to create creative visions, not just in the choreography, but in a holistic piece. The costuming, the sensory, the elements, and what that looks like. And I got to experiment a lot with that. And I danced a lot. I started doing some theater arts. Never completed the performance, unfortunately, but it was with a world cabaret theater arts champion, like spins in the air, that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun. I'll show you a video later. And of course, the social dance scene in New York. I mean, you got Cuban nightclubs, you got world dance sport studios, everything that you can dream of. You can turn anywhere and there's a ballroom dance studio. A lot of them use live music, pianists, percussions, drums. So New York reawakened what was just a passion into something that is very active, something that I acknowledge that I want to pursue, whether it becomes my retirement one day or it's just my recalibration and my sanity. And I grasped onto it and I have not let go. If anything, it's like worsening in passion every day, or heightening. Worsening is the wrong word choice. Heightening in passion every day. Yeah.
What? So many people come up with ideas, and they like to tell people about their ideas, and then they move on to the next thing. But I think like real like entrepreneurs or successful people like you like can't get that idea out of their head until they try to some extent. And
Absolutely.
like doesn't mean it's going to work out, but there's like
it's an obsession.
It's not going to go away.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think that is? Or like what makes you different than other people? Wow.
If you don't mind, let me just ponder on this one. Oh, wow. I think a part of it is the thrill that you get from challenging yourself and to see if your ideas are actually capable of sustainability. Because you have to test a model, right? And that ultimately determines if it succeeds or not. From a clinical standpoint, people test drugs and then they're like, okay, it works, it doesn't work. Let's figure out what to do next. From a creative aspect, it's the same thing. We all desire some level of creativity. It's truly what feeds our souls. And it can be demonstrated through operas, theaters, ballets, comedy shows, even walking into a beautiful bar or a coffee shop and you're like, I love the vibes here. Well, what you're really loving is someone's creative vision on how they put something together. Interior design is creativity, right? So we all crave it and we all enjoy it. I think I really enjoy testing models because if something succeeds, then it can become a business. It can become sustainable. Then you kind of enter into that realm of, okay, how do I continue to give this gift to people and in a way that they can enjoy it? And if it doesn't work, well, then you just move on to something else. So I guess I personally enjoy experimentation. I'm not scared of experimentation. Maybe it's childhood grit. Maybe it's the way I'm psychologically wired, but I don't run away from it.
Yeah. I think something interesting about it that I guess fairly recently dawned on me is that like growing up blue collar, poor town, like working with our hands, working on the farm, like science wasn't a priority. And even when I started getting my education, like I steered away from science. And then here I end up with this entrepreneurial journey and not realizing that I'm doing the scientific method on a daily basis. And that's what it is. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yep.
It's like, create a theory, test it, adapt, and continue to grow. It's
absolutely. It's by the book. I mean, any like standard business models and frameworks that you take, it's equivalent to any scientific study.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we love testing hypotheses.
That's it. That's it. Awesome. So, all right. Where are we at? We're in Brooklyn. And did you continue your education and go into another field, or like where'd your career go from there?
Yeah, so I got very fortunate. It's kind of a convoluted path, but I ended up in public health. I ended up kind of working at the cusp, at the center of technology, policy as it comes down for Medicaid, and operations. In simple terms, I like to say I can sit between an engineer, a doctor, and a policy analyst, and I will be the translator. And then I will sort of output what is needed to make all three things come true for all three sort of roles. And that involved very heavily, ended up working and leading population health. It's called population health softwares. I began working on under large organizations across the East Coast. It's kind of very technical, so I don't want to convolute, but basically where I am right now throughout this journey, thankfully because of all the organizations I've had the chance to interact with, is I'm a chief information officer. So I'm sort of an executive that works under the Department of Health of New York. I know we're in North Carolina. I kind of got embedded in New York. So even though I'm remote right now, I get to stay part of the community that oversees Medicaid reform for Medicaid populations in order for them to access food, housing, transportation services that they cannot otherwise based on various eligibility criteria. I'm the conduit between the technology used to do this. I'm the conduit that sends this data across systems, so to the state, down to the practice, to the patient, down to interpreting the policy and the operations needs in redesigning how this mechanism is supposed to work in order to make it successful. Throughout this journey, I actually opened up my own boutique consulting firm specifically for healthcare consulting, whether it is technology startups, whether it is practices that are trying to understand how to evolve how they take care of patients in the evolving landscape with policies that are coming out. So I'll give you one example to just kind of make it practical. Something called remote patient monitoring, which is like taking blood pressure at home or taking pulse at home or your glucose at home. There are systems where actually when you do it through a cloud, the information will go and land in your doctor's medical record system. That's new technology. Even more, Medicare and Medicaid now pays for it. Well, kind of depends, but it was never a concept before. So you would take your blood pressure on a piece of paper for 5-6 weeks, and then you would walk into your doctor's practice and he would analyze it and then he'll make decisions. You don't have to do that anymore. Now he gives you the blood pressure monitor at home. You take your blood pressure, he scans your readings every day, every 5 minutes, whatever it is, and then he makes a decision, we should really change your dosage. It's more immediate. It's not too late. You didn't end up in the hospital because you were experimenting. So Medicare now pays for this. Okay, so you have a policy. We can now cover Medicare patients to do this. You have a technology. How do you make it work? How do you connect the systems? And then you have the operations. How do you not already take a very busy doctor who can barely keep up with what has to be done day to day and create the platform for him to be able to look at this in an easy way, interpret it in an easy way, make a decision in an easy way without you having to take time off work to come in or him having to see you when he can see a more critical patient. Like that's one example of the intersection where I live. I hope I explained that okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like real world examples sometimes make it simple because the healthcare industry is so complex. That's where I am today. I still have my boutique consulting firm, but I mostly am focusing on this one massive project under the Department of Health of New York. And that's my day to day. And then my studio here and my ball that I'm building, Time Voyager's ball, are my creative outlets. They're my future for the community, my future for myself. At least I like to think that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm not very into arts, like, for the most part. Music doesn't really do much for me. I haven't been into dance too much, but theater I've always liked. I've always liked acting. And then moving from Wilmington to here, like I'd go to, the basement of a bar in Wilmington and see the best, most emotional play I've ever seen in my life with 20 people. Oh, I love that. And it's like, I love being able to do that. I'd rather do that than go watch a movie.
Yes.
Then we move here and like I'm looking for it and it's not here. I can't find the theaters. And there's not for the kids either. Like there's theater program, but it's singing on a stage or like, not really learning how to act and how to do those things. So I think that's something that our community absolutely needs.
Absolutely needs. We can't go to Durham, Chapel Hill all the time for this. And I am... in my heart, I absolutely love the Firebox Theater that we had here in Wake Forest or have here in Wake Forest. I really think we need a black box theater. I think we need the infrastructure in this town because the talent is here. Let me tell you. So there are incredible talented theater directors, theater stage playwriters, everything is in this town. It is the creation of the infrastructure and the home for them to be able to do this. Yeah. Whether it is real estate, whether it is funding, whether it is, I guess those are the two things, right? Yeah. Real estate and funding. If there's a way to funnel this somehow from an attention standpoint, and we know, for instance, I know the town is in great support of trying to continue to build a theater theme or scene here of some sorts. I think the town is growing very fast, and I don't think people know where it sits and how to embed it in a sort of how to embed it in order to make it thrive. And I dream of having theater steals my heart too.
Yeah.
Randy, it's just the way people can act and get lost in their roles, and it takes me away. We do need that here. Yeah.
The best play I've ever seen, like I said, it was in the basement of this place that was called the Soapbox in Wilmington. And there was no props in the whole play. And there was 3 actors, and there was a baby blanket, and that's it for the whole play. And it was this journey through the mountains as pioneers. And at one point, the woman kills her baby, and like the audience is just bawling, and it's like, how do you create that with nothing? And it's like, it's so awesome. And it's like, I can still see it in my head. That was, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah. It's that little aspect of human ingenuity. And when you can experience it, when people are given the platform to create that, and you're given the opportunity as an audience to experience that, that's truly, I think, what creates a sense of humanity between all of us. I mean, we have our day-to-days, but to walk away and be able to reconcile the depth of what it means to be human and the burdens that we carry as we have to make decisions, theater is definitely a foundational place to experience those emotions. We don't just casually meet and, give me your deepest, darkest secrets, and what are you willing to sacrifice in your life right now? Like, that's not how you start a conversation. Yeah.
I think sometimes it just, in a community like ours, it doesn't necessarily take the right resources. It takes the support, but it takes the right person, not to just create a business, but try and create a culture. Yeah. Which was what it sounds like you're trying to do. Yes.
You said, I'm going to steal that for myself. I'm trying to create a culture. It's a combination of 2 things. One is I got the opportunity to create the space. Now it's small, right? It's MK Creative Arts Studio is in a 120-year-old building. It's 600 or so square feet in the main room. It's not really going to be a huge theater or creative art center. But to create the space is to allow people to use their talent. I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to explain it. So I'm not capable of opening up a full-time dance studio and running it every single day, right? I have my career and my sort of financial income that I need, but dancing will never leave my life. So if I can create a space, I use 10, 15 hours a week to teach my wedding couples, to teach my high school theater kids, to teach my young competitive kids. I have a place to call home, and it is affordable and it is safe. I'm not signing a 10-year lease on a storefront. I'm not able to take on that risk. There are people I know that are like me, they have a passion and they have a gift, whether it is quilt making, resin art, piano lesson, whatever it is. And maybe they're a full-time mom, maybe they're an engineer, but they need a space that's not their house. They can't be creative in their house, or their house has crying babies and they can't focus. They just need a place to go to continue to manifest and bring their art forward. That is why I created MK Creative Arts Studio. Simply, it's meant to be affordable. I'm not kidding. It's $25 an hour. I don't charge $100, $200, $300 an hour for space. You come in, it's only yours for whatever it is you want to do for that time period. If I can create a space where people can say, okay, maybe I'll try out doing what I care so much about. Maybe I'll try teaching what I'm very good at. It will create awareness. So I'll kind of learn who the creative people are in the community. And then they will gain a following. They will feel empowered that there is a space for them to be creative. Because they're all here. I know everybody's here. Everyone's just kind of hiding, or maybe doesn't know how to express their gifts. Okay, so here's someone in the space using it 1 hour a week, or 2 hours a week, or 10 hours a week to do what they do. At that point, the community is created. And I do want to point out, this is very different than the arts that comes from Parks and Rec. Like, I grew up in Parks and Rec. That's how I learned so many cool things. But a lot of people are experimenting and they feel nervous going into a Park Center program because you have to have a delivered expertise. Like if you're coming in, you know what you're doing. Yeah. I cannot tell you how many people walk through the doors of that studio that say, I want to try teaching. I have been crocheting my whole life. I really want to share my skills. I'm going to experiment with doing a class. They can't carry the burden of being prepared to teach a 6-week class somewhere because they don't know if they're good at it or if they can deliver the information. That's the beautiful part. So there's the creating of MK Creative Arts Studio. So it's a home where I teach ballroom, but it is also a home to other creative artists. And if it fails, it fails. But people walk away and they're like, wow, like I tried, I think I know what I want to do now. And then they come back with a designed program and they're like, I'm going to teach this out of your studio. And I've had people that outgrew their class in the studio and they actually ended up moving to a bigger facility. That is fantastic. Like to know that I created a space that gave someone the hope to try something. Wow. And then there's what you experience in that Wilmington Underground Theater, that sensation to bring it to more people here. And that is where my Time Voyager's ball theory came out of. Living in New York, I got spoiled a little bit by a concept of immersive theater. There's a very famous production in New York called Sleep No More out of a place called McKittrick Hotel. So it's an old hotel, completely run down like warehouse style, 3 stories tall, very dark lit. And what you do is it's Hamlet, but it's not you sitting down and you watching Hamlet. The audience have to put on a mask and the actors move across the 3 floors and you follow the storyline. So you can go into this room, this room, this room. You can follow this particular role. And everyone then meets at the end at the dining room scene. So you get to create your own experience and you can't touch the actors, but you can get very close to them. So you feel like you're part of that story. This sort of theater, the McKittrick Hotel and the theater productions, it was so popular. I went to it twice and then I started going to the other theaters they were producing, which was a little more intense. One was called Down Under or Deep Down Under. It was an Alice in Wonderland adult interpretation. And that became even more immersive. The Mad Hatter would literally grab your hand. That was only 20 tickets per production, so they could handle the audience. And he would literally pull you into a room. Now, you're not allowed to speak back, or if you do, they will continue to stay in their role. And he would like put you in a chair and he would be like this, like ha ha ha, and like slamming a cup of tea in front of you, drink. And you're sitting there and you're not off the stage. You're literally like on the stage with him, and someone could be watching you. They could walk away somewhere else. There was a scene where Alice was sitting in a bathtub and the door was, as an audience, you can't get past the door. The door's like a little bit open and then it's locked. So they secured it. So you can kind of peer in and there's a mirror reflecting an actress and it's just her back and she's topless and you can see her like washing herself. And again, you can't get in and it's just a reflection. But you're sensing so much, the smells, the touches, the story. And that kind of got hooked into me, how art can be so multidimensional. It's not going to a museum and admiring a painting, which I do love. It's not sitting at the ballet, which I go to every ballet North Carolina produces. I love that production team so much. It can be 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional. And I personally have an infatuation with the Gilded Era. I think it's a time where innovation was so expensive. I mean, everything we have today is from that era. The concept of flight, the concept of car, the concept of wireless communication, the concept of modern day medicine, everything from what happened in that period of 1880 to 1920 is literally the foundation. We are regurgitating what was already invented. Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, the suffrage movement, germ theory. I mean, it's just, I'm in love with it. So I thought, okay, I'll do something Wake Forest or the Triangle area has never seen before. I'll put together a ball, like a Viennese ball, but it'll be time traveling. It will all go back when you're entering into this theater, which is Wakefield Barn, not a theater, right? Beautiful venue. And you are literally transported into that time period. So everything you're experiencing is a form of art. So think of actors pretending to be Albert Einstein or Coco Chanel, bartenders dressed in a dapper scene, real typewriters with real letters coming out, Viennese ball dancers, carnival, the spirits from that time, the little glass aspirin bottles, the music, the quartet, where everything there is like a theater, but you're part of it. And you're experiencing it and you're sensing it. The sound of the orchestra, which will then become a DJ, because listening to an orchestra for 4 hours is a little bit hard, right? And the smells and the sounds and the newspaper clippings, just everything will take you back. And I'm obsessed with creating this experience because I think they say art is dying. I don't think art is dying. I think people are looking for art to become more multidimensional to keep their interest.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Art is not dying for me. I will stare at a painting in a museum for 3 hours, no problem. But I think the Triangle area deserves something to ignite it.
Yeah.
And I want people to walk away and feel like, wow, I feel like I was part of a movie. And for it to become an annual thing like the Shakespeare Festival, like something that people look forward to as an escape, a moment to celebrate innovation and creativity, a time where scientists and artists and innovators were curious and not for instant gratification of what can they achieve in their lifetime. You know, Nikola Tesla left the blueprint for wireless technology. He wasn't able to accomplish it himself, right? But it's how can I inspire people to find the courage to create and innovate in a way that reminds them that we don't have to accomplish right now, but we can't be scared. We have to experiment. And I think I can accomplish that through art. I think. It's an experiment.
Natural evolution, though.
Yeah.
Everything has to evolve. Everything else in our culture is becoming more and more immersive. So it would only make sense that the arts would become more immersive.
Yeah.
But then what it does is show people the possibilities. Not saying everybody's going to try to accomplish that, but then it sends some people back to the roots and creates a whole movement. Now you're creating the culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish. Yeah.
I see it. You definitely got us to see it. Your passion is palpable. It's pretty awesome.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah. A lot to think about.
Definitely.
One thing you said was that there's people here in the community. They just need an outlet. And that's before we started today, we were talking about the podcast. And that's one of my thoughts too, was like, I meet people all the time that have these awesome journeys or stories or struggles or whatever. And it's like, how do we shine a light on that? And like, just give them the opportunity to share their story, and people open up. It's so amazing. Yeah. And it's like, I have people ask me, well, how do you find these amazing people in your community? It's like, because they're everywhere. You just have to talk to them and give them the opportunity. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful that you are doing this. I cannot wait to continue to see, I do, after Ilya, I've been watching your podcast and just learning so much about people that have been in town for a long time and can speak to its evolution. That to me is very interesting from some of the guests that you have had. But continuing to use this podcast as a way to bring people forward, I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Is there anything that we didn't cover or anything else you want to tell us about your studio before we kind of go into our closing of the interview?
I guess, I'll just share that I think these are early stepping stones. I do wish to continue to build that sort of creative art community here in Wake Forest. I have big goals and dreams of having a 2-3 story facility where anyone can come in and experience a particular movement art or creative art. At that time, intergenerational, a father coming with a son, and there's a room where you can take wood trains and paint them together, or a sewing room where you can make your own teddy bears with your mom or grandma and not pay $200 at the mall at Build-A-Bear these days, or whatever it is these days. So I do dream of continuing to build a home, and I want to thank you for the support. So yeah.
Absolutely. So your goal is to be doing this full time?
My goal is, as I attempt to build a family with my husband, I know I'll reach a point where, while my healthcare career has been extremely rewarding in all aspects of my life, I will have to, I don't want to say sunset it, but definitely decrease the amount of effort I'm giving it. It is very high stress, and it is very demanding. And I know that's not the mom that I want to be. I want to be more present. So this Time Voyagers Ball, this event, and then the studio, I do see as becoming more, maybe in 10 years or so, the front lines of not only in my identity, but also my streams of success from a business standpoint, and something that my children can grow up in, right? So if I bring them to a florist design session for Time Voyagers Ball, I get to have them with me. They're not listening to me screaming at an engineer about something. Yeah. Right? You know what I mean? It's I get to have children with me, and then the studio, as it continues to grow, a place I can just hang out at and kids can hang out at. So I do see maybe in 10 years this becoming a shift and a transition. I am in my early stepping stones of building the sustainability around that. And I do feel confident in how this is going to look. I think it's just a matter of time of balancing we'll call it the day job and the night job, so to speak, in a way that continues to maintain success in both of them. But I do see that shift happening for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Balance is a word that, excuse me, balance is a word that a lot of people like to use. Like, how do you find your balance, or you have no balance? But I think it's, how do you stay motivated, productive, grounded, and be a part of all aspects of your life productively? Like, how do you do that?
A couple ways. One is I have a lot of buy-in from people that believe in my vision, that are there to support me. So I have people that I can count on. I think if I was carrying the weight for everything myself, I would have probably quit. So there are those people and those leaders in the community that support me and my vision, and actually help me through various aspects of developing the projects. So one is finding people that buy into what you're trying to do. And that's kind of like that army, right? The 300. When you're feeling weak in that moment, you still have someone pushing forward. That's very critical. Second of all is finding mechanisms to celebrate the success, right? Because the difficulties are always going to be there. And like, there's moments for this Time Voyagers Ball. It feels like a mega like Dubai wedding. That feels like what I'm planning, right? It's so astronomical. And you start to question if you're capable, because sometimes we create a beast. And are you capable of keeping that beast on a leash? And if you celebrate the good or the successful points of, wow, these incredible artists have agreed to come, or wow, this incredible storyline is actually taking place, it gives you those internal wins, and then you can look at the things that are potentially still stuck or not progressing the way you want them to progress, and you kind of fixate, okay, if I was able to accomplish this or this or this, I'll find a way to accomplish this. So not fixating on the problems, but fixating on the good that has been done so far. And the last thing I would say is, I think this might be unique to me, but I constantly visualize the final outcome. Like, I have some peers that in whatever work they do, they visualize the steps. And that can cause paralysis. Yeah. And if I do that, it will cause me paralysis. So I keep visualizing 2 or 3 moments. I'm visualizing the bar. I'm visualizing a particular part of Time Voyagers Ball that's going to be a surprise. And I'm visualizing how excited people are going to be getting dressed up. when they're at home and they don't have a reason to dress up, or they haven't had a reason to dress up, and how they're going to feel men putting on, some cool outfits, suspenders, a hat, woman putting on dresses, like that feeling that they're going to feel. Like, so I'm fixating on these 3 moments, and I'm like, okay, I have to create that feeling for them. And I only fixate on that. I don't fixate on the steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's hard to explain to people like how I see things in my brain. So I want to try you on this, because to me, like when I get an idea or a vision, like I can already see it completed in my head, but not in a like high quality or high definition. It's like one of the old films on the reels where it's kind of spotty and breaks up in between.
Okay.
Like I can see most of it. There's just some little gaps that are going to kind of be a surprise as I go. And but the whole visualization of what's going to happen is already there.
I love that.
Do you see things like, can you see this whole play in your head, or the ball in your head?
I see the whole play. Yeah, I don't have gaps, at least not for the Time Voyagers ball. I feel like for the studio that's kind of sponsoring and hosting the ball, for the studio, I do see that occasionally, because the studio requires a lot more, I would say, community engagement on getting people to come out and see, do they want to use the space for something? The ball it's pure advertisement.
Yeah.
It's how you promote it, right? And thankfully I have a fantastic marketing team. It's how you promote it, and people will buy the ticket because they're curious. They don't have to question of, am I ready to put myself out there as a teacher in this form, or am I ready to commit to building a student base? So I definitely have the gaps in the film for the studio, but I don't have the gaps in the film for the event.
I wonder, you've already written the ball, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think that's why you don't? Because you actually took the time to sit down and go through the whole thing?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, there's also the part of it when I rent the venue, they're like, okay, like what is it going to look like? And I'm like, oh, let me actually write it out. A cocktail hour this long, dancing this long, show this long. So there is like that external force of nature. But then also, when it comes to creating in the art form, generally, and I think why, like my peers I know can probably resonate, you generally see the whole vision in the beginning and then you rebuild it as it goes through. Yep. Because that's where it comes from, is you see a dance performance in your mind, or you see a stage setup, and then you actually start building it. Ooh, my apologies. You actually start building it. And as you're building it, you're like, well, this fabric doesn't work, or this space is different than I thought, or these nails are going to hurt someone on stage. So I am rebuilding as I'm going through with it, because I'm starting to understand, like, I'm gonna have a cigar lounge, right? I can't put it in here. I have to put it over there, because if someone doesn't like cigar smoke, but then if I put it over there, where am I gonna put the dancers? And you kind of start to go through, but that initial design, I think the brains, my fellow creatives, we kind of have an initial view right away. And that's what gets us going. I think if we see things in pieces, it's hard for us to get our own buy-in to say, okay, I'm gonna commit to doing this project.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This was amazing. We've met before in passing, at a couple of things, and like just those brief interactions, like I had very high hopes for this interview just because of how you are and your personality.
But thanks, Randy.
Yeah, your level of passion like really came through today, and your knowledge, and it was definitely not a disappointment. It exceeded all my expectations, so I appreciate that.
I'm glad. I really enjoyed being here. I love what you're building, so you have my support for sure.
All right, we're going to get into a couple rapid fire questions and then close it out.
Okay.
Most rewarding moment?
Marrying my husband.
Best investment that you've made?
The house that we bought in North Carolina. Actually, sorry, I'm going to say that. My graduate degree.
Yeah.
My graduate degree, yeah. Changed my life.
One financial lesson every artist needs to learn?
You will definitely be broke. You will definitely be broke in the beginning. 100%. No first round, first year, first cycle of anything will produce profit. Your aim is to break even, if that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then tell us where we can find you. Tell us when they can expect to the ball, how they can buy tickets.
Of course. So the studio is located on North Main Street next to Pelicans Borders Restaurant. So right here, sort of in the northern part of our downtown, at the end of the beautiful historical street. MK Creative Art Studio, social media, email, phone number, everything's available online. Time Voyagers Ball will be Saturday, October 17th at 7 p.m. at Wakefield Barn. Tickets are already available for sale. timevoyagersball.com. So pretty kind of simple URL. You can also find everything on social media as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Now we end every interview the same way. And it's because once I figured out my definition, it changed how I live my life and run my businesses. How do you define success?
I define success as the relentless pursuit of trying to use your gifts to the maximum potential.
Perfect way to end it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you.